Hello humanoids, welcome to Halfling Hobbies. I'm Halfling Hannah, and it's no secret that a lot of DMs don't really like the combat system in 5e. It's clunky, it's slow, and it's just not all that much fun. And my question is, why? What is it that makes combat so, boring in 5e, and how can we fix it? Now, there's been a lot of videos about this, but I think that they all focus on the mechanics of combat, and I don't really think that's the issue. I think the issue is the break from the story, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Here we go. Alright humanoids, let's talk about combat, and first of all, why I think it isn't as much fun as it could be. Number one, it breaks the immersion of the game. You're going along in your campaign, your characters are role-playing, they are in character, they're talking with one another and NPCs, and then suddenly you have a fight and all of that goes out the window. Instead, we just have some dice and math. And you're trying to do the maximum amount of damage possible, and the concept of being your character in the middle of that conflict, that never comes out. It's actively discouraged because if you're doing something creative, a lot of times it doesn't work out because the monster's gonna eat you. So number one is that it breaks character immersion. Suddenly we're not our characters, we are ourselves rolling math rocks. And that's just really out of place. Honestly, it's super out of place. 2, players do not care about other players' turns. This is where almost all of that cell phone management comes in that DMs talk about all the time, being upset that their players are on their phones, not paying attention when it comes to their turn. They have no idea what's going on. It's because we are inherently selfish creatures, and when it's not our turn to do something, we don't care. And we as the DM, we have to figure out how to incentivize them to care about other players' turns. It's just, that's just facts. Number 3, players have no idea what their character can or should do, therefore really drawing out that combat time and making it unbearably long. This just happens a lot. You have a player who can take a turn like that, and then you have another player who really needs to think about every single possibility and option for about 10 minutes. And it can lead to really boring combat. And there are some ways around that, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. Number 4, I personally don't think there are enough roleplay options for actions and bonus actions. I understand that it's combat. Don't yell at me for that. I get it. It's combat. It's supposed to be focused on combat. But even in combat moments, there should be opportunities for your character to come out and do something creative that maybe only your character would know to do. It's not like in movies, these characters stop being themselves because suddenly they're in combat. It is their creativity and the character themselves that makes for an interesting combat because they think to do things that maybe other people wouldn't in that situation. And why shouldn't we have that and encourage that in our own combat as well? And then number 5, DMs put the monster before the story. It's just, oh man, here's a Tarrasque, and there you go, and we're in combat now, and roll initiative, and there's not a lot of story to it, honestly. And this goes back to breaking the immersion, but on the DM's part. We break the immersion in our worlds in combats a lot of times by not carefully tying everything together into our story. And random encounters, I think, are the biggest culprits of this. And if you know me very much, you know I'm not a fan of random encounters. Random events, yes. Encounters, no. I don't think if they don't serve a purpose, why are they there? That's just me. So how do we fix this? I'm gonna go through each one of these problems and I'm gonna try and give you some actionable steps to see if we can solve these problems and make our combat just as engaging and story-driven as the rest of our campaign. So number 1, ask character-driven questions during combat. One of the things that DMs do a lot is they say, what do you do? Now, there are questions that activate the left side of your brain, which is the analytical side of your brain, and there are questions that activate the right side of your brain, which is the creative. And the more we can get players back into the right side of the brain, the more it's going to flow with our story. Left is when they're doing the math, they're figuring things out, they're trying to do as much damage as humanly possible, which, gosh, they can do a lot of damage when they really try. It's pretty insane. But they're trying to figure that out, and they get stuck in that way of thinking and just do the thing and do the thing and do the thing, and they forget about their character. So if we as the DM can ask questions that activate that right side of the brain and bring them back into character, then we can kind of blend the two together. This analytical combat with the actual character roleplay, and it will make the entire combat much more interesting and engaging for everyone and make it feel like it doesn't break the immersion, but is actually a part of the story. Some questions that you can ask are, how does your character respond? Now, that question may sound like, what do you do? But it is different, and it activates a different part of your brain, because we take the word respond as more emotional than do, which is analytical. See? Brain science. Gotta get them with the science. So you ask, how do you respond to this situation? Or if you see another character do something that you know a different player would maybe disagree with, such as using necromancy magic. You see them doing that, you ask the other player, how do you respond? This goes into number 2, because players don't care about other players' turns, so you as the DM, you have to bring things to their attention. So when you have one player doing something, ask another random player how they respond or how they feel about what they are seeing, especially if a player goes down. Ask the other players around the table, how do you respond, react, or feel about seeing your comrade fall in battle? The more you can do this, and especially those wondering eye ones when you see the phone start to come out and they're not using it for something useful like spells or whatever else, because you can tell there's a difference. Nobody looks down at their spell list and smiles, unless they have extra spell slots that they didn't know about. Anyway, so if you see them starting to drift and wander away, maybe hit them with one of those questions, bring them back in. That's a teacher technique right there. You ever wondered why you got called on when you really didn't want to get called on? We gotta keep you engaged. That's how it works. So maybe just ask those questions in the middle of combat as well. It doesn't have to cost anything. It doesn't have to become a whole thing. It can if you want it to, but it's just a way to keep them engaged in that moment and reacting to what they see at the table. Number 4, there are no role play actions or bonus actions, and to this I say homebrew some. I could give you some examples, but really it depends on your campaign and your characters. As you're going through the game, come up with bonus actions specifically for your characters. This can be incredibly fun and customizable to what you're doing, but make sure that they're not combat related. They're not going to give them an edge or an advantage in combat necessarily, but they are some things that they can do in the middle of combat to kind of show their character just a little bit more. For example, if you have a player that is a coward, perhaps they can take the bonus action to hide, even though they're not a rogue, because it fits with their personality. It's not going to give them sneak attack on anything like it will a rogue, but it fits with their player character and what they're doing. So get together with your group. What would they maybe want to be able to do for their characters in combat that they don't feel like they're able to at this time? And number 5, DMs don't put the story first. Always lead with the story. If you've got a monster that you want to introduce and you want your players to fight, begin with its effect on the world that your players are in. Give them hints about what's to come. Maybe instead of just dropping in a loup-garou, you could have your players discover a little homestead with the door smashed in and gashes and blood on all of the walls. And that's when they discover the loup-garou and have to fight it. That is leading with story. It gives them something to hold on to, something even to respond to emotionally as a player. It is far better than simply dropping in combat for no reason, and does much more to keep your players engaged and interested with your combat. These are just some easy ways to up the roleplay and the storytelling when it comes to combat. Honestly, I don't think the mechanics are all that bad. I think that it just feels a little out of place. And if we can figure out how to better place that puzzle piece in our campaigns, it will go a long way to creating an enjoyable experience for us and our players. If you have any ideas about how to make combat less annoying in 5e, please put them down in the comments below. I love for these videos to be resources for new DMs and DMs who are at their wits' end. And trust me, I've been at my wits' end with combat. I understand. Help us out. Put some comments down below. And until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. It's Halfling Hannah here, signing out. Big thank you to all my amazing patrons, and especially to the patrons here who sponsored this video. You all are absolutely amazing, and I'm having to talk longer in order to get you all on here. I cannot believe how many of you guys have chosen to support Halfling Hobbies and what we're doing here. You're absolutely amazing, and I can't thank you enough. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's enough. Okay, bye.